Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Solo Experience. I'm your host, Ryan, and today we're going to be talking eventually about are aesthetics important? I've hinted and talked about this, I feel like a lot of these things ad nauseum in the past, but we're going to talk about it again because I think it is very important for the use case and the utilization of the room. But before we get into that, let's talk about what Ryan's watched. I've been on a journey to try and watch at least a movie a day. While I'm working, I have something on, not paying like full attention to it, but it is on, and I do enjoy them. So yesterday's movie was One Battle After Another with Leonardo DiCaprio. That movie was not what I expected. I'd probably rate it a B. It could be good to some people. The story was just out there, and there really was no setup for anything involved. It just kind of plops you into the middle of everything, which is fine. It was a riveting story, but it didn't grab me, right? I wasn't fully captivated by what was going on. So I'll give it a B. It's worth watching for sure. I don't know that I'll ever rewatch it, but it was worth watching. Next movie, don't know that I'll have time today, is probably going to be The Brutalist or The Long Walk or She Rides Shotgun, Bring Her Back, or If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Probably one of those is going to be next on the list. We talked about Predator Badlands already. Mickey 17 is another one that I've got on my short list of things to watch. Uh, if I watched anything else recently, no, because I've been doing more and more of these streams. Jonathan and I will be streaming tomorrow. We confirmed that. It is on the schedule for 8 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. It's a little later. He had some family conflicts, so we'll be doing that. Uh, Not sure what the topic is. It just may be answering questions, catching up on what's been going on with him for the past week. Another highlight, I did see John McAdoo brought over the Valerian Max, and I had not seen it in person. I had heard what the Kansas City group had seen. It was this same projector. So John brought it over and we put it on my screen. For $4,000, it's a pretty good projector. It does a really good job. I can't do it because of the RBE. I can still see the RBE even when the RBE, whatever elimination mode is on. Not nearly as much, but I can still see it on fast moving objects, and it makes it so that it's not pleasant for me. Looking past that, though, for the majority of people, because I know I'm really sensitive to it, I can fully recommend it. It's a good projector, right? A couple limitations though on it that I don't think are getting talked about. One, I think there's a lot of misinformation on measurements that are being posted. The one that I would recommend that people read for a review is done by Sammy Prescott, and he is a professional calibrator. He's reviewed the Valerian Max. I've asked him for interesting contrast. He didn't post the measurements, so I've asked him for him, but he is measuring it with commercial level gear. He knows what he's doing. He's somebody that I would trust. He's on, I think it's the Projector Central, I think is the website he's on. So if you guys have any interest in watching or reading up on the Valerian Max, I encourage you to do that. It did really good for the money. I can say it's not the best projector out there, but I can safely say for the money, it dominates, right? The LS 12,000 is going to have a hard time at that mark. They trade blows, and the LS 12,000 is more expensive. I'm not a fan of the Valerian Max's form factor for what it is. I don't like its mounting solution. It, I think, needs to conform to how all the other projectors are on the market. I understand why they did it and why they made it a square, because I think a lot of people are putting it on tables, they're putting it on couches, they're doing that stuff. But I think they need to have an option that is more of a normal projector form factor for mounting solutions, and to have a different mount instead of the pole. I think that would be, but maybe I'm looking too far into that. Maybe I'm considering that too much. I don't know. That's just my take on it. The last thing, or two last things, is one, I could see the pixel grid on my projector. Now, my seat is about 9.5 feet from my screen, and I could see the pixels grid. It is an e-shifter. Take that for what it is. John could not see the pixel grid. So if it bothers you, it bothers you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not a game changer for a lot of people. I'm just saying that I could see it. It does bother me. But that's more than likely because I'm used to not seeing it. If I was used to seeing it, I don't think it would be that big of an issue. And then the last thing is when the RBE elimination option is on, I don't remember what it's called. When it's on, it makes a high pitch whining noise, very much like JVC when the 8K E shift is on. That high pitch, and it's higher pitched than that. John had a difficult time hearing it. It was kind of obnoxious for me. It was sitting right next to me. So remember that. It was 2 feet to my right. So normal mounting position may not be an issue. Where it was sitting, it was a problem for me. It was much less of a problem when content was playing, but when you were in the menu system, it was annoying. Um, it's a compromise, right? You're eliminating a lot of the RBE for the noise, and the feature that is eliminating that is creating the noise. So again, fantastic projector for the money. Valerian has done very well with that unit. I think we really just need to get some consensus on measurements, which is why I really like Sammy Prescott, because he knows what he's doing. He does this for a living, and he's not going to mislead you. He's going to tell you how it is. I know Sammy Prescott personally. He measured, I think, the projector in full open iris like 2000 and change to 1, and then full iris closed was like 4100 to 1 for native contrast. One last thing before we move on to the aesthetics part that I think is worth pointing out, and he noted this in his review, is the lumen claims that they make. And this goes for a lot of projectors, right? So this is not me just saying I'm picking on Valerian. This is something that people need to take into account for any projector they're looking at. Figure out how they're getting the maximum lumen output of the projector. What setting is that in? A lot of times that setting is unusable. It's not usable. So in Valerian, that was the case. It's like I don't remember exactly what the output is called, but it's a max output mode, and it makes the screen very green. So when you take that away, you're getting somewhere in the 2500 lumens range. So you drop drastically from maximum output down to 2500. And that was I saw it. I didn't measure it, but I did note a big reduction in light. And then Sammy noted it in his review that it was a significant reduction. So just take that into account. I am not picking on Valerian. A lot of manufacturers do this so that they can claim the lumen numbers. It is not typically a usable mode. Just keep that in mind. Take that maximum output with a grain of salt because it's not usable in a lot of cases. Macro Epoxy says that's really interesting. The RBA was almost completely silent compared to any other projector I've heard. So I think a big part of this is your hearing. What is your hearing test at? It was not silent for me. I can still hear static on tube TV. I can still hear a lot of that. So if you can't hear that frequency, it's not an issue. It was an issue for me. And maybe it was just that unit. I don't know. My sample size is 1 unit. So all I can say is I heard it. It was annoying, but there are options on other projectors that do emit high-pitched whining. The Valerian is not alone in that. It would just annoy me personally. It's not a Valerian only thing. Other projectors have that high-pitched whining with other features, and potentially if it was in a mounting position behind me, it may not be a problem. It was just annoying for me where it was sitting. Full transparency. Have you tested any gaming on that projector? No, I did not. I don't typically game on projectors, so I don't really have I don't really have a how can I put this? A foundation to make that comparison for the Valerian. So I wouldn't be a great my opinion wouldn't have a lot of weight on it. I don't know how much weight my opinion has in the grand scheme of things anyway, but you know what I mean. Okay. Just getting caught up with this. Jared says I have a Stewart film screen. It's a great screen. Uh, oh, can you send it to get microperfed? I don't know. I have never been asked that question. Jared, scan the code or scan the QR code here. Send me an email. I need the serial number for your screen. Usually it's on the bottom of the frame. And I'll ask. I will ask Stewart. I need to talk to them anyway about M-Wave. So we'll get that. I'll ask. Any other questions before we jump into this? It doesn't look like it. No. Okay. So today's topic, are aesthetics important? I think it depends on the person. I hear a lot of times, there was I can't remember who made this comment, but on ABS forum, he's like, I'm going to make my theater a bat cave. It's not right now. I want it to be a bat cave. And that's great. For me, though, and for a lot of the customers that I interact with, aesthetics are a pretty important part of the equation, especially for spouse approval factor, because usually it's one spouse or one partner in a relationship that is pushing for a home theater. The other one's like, do we really need it? Do we want to spend that money? It's taking up a room, all that jazz. So aesthetics, in order to appease that particular person, a lot of times are really important. And to figure out how important those aesthetics need to be or what direction those aesthetics need to go, I encourage people to ask this question before they start designing. I think I mentioned this on the last stream on Tuesday. Ask, what am I going to use this space for? Because in a lot of cases, in the majority of cases, the space is not a dedicated theater. It may be in these circles with the enthusiasts that it's a dedicated space. It is a room only used for watching movies and maybe gaming and TV shows. But in a lot of contexts, in a lot of situations, in a lot of homes, in a lot of domiciles, it is a multi-use space. It's in a living room. It's in a basement media space. And the space gets used for other things other than movies or TV shows or gaming. It's a family gathering space. It's a social space. It's I'm going to have people over and we may watch something, but it's I want to be around people space. In a lot of those situations, aesthetics are more important. The lights are going to be on. Other things are more important than the sound and the screen, especially how things look. So asking yourself the question of, how is this space going to be used? Before you design it, before you pick equipment, before you do anything, that should be the first question you ask and figure out an answer. How is this space? And really spend time on it. Think about it. Write stuff down. Weigh on it. Don't just answer the question immediately and move on, because I find people will do this. I've had customers that do this. They'll use a space and they'll be like, man, I wish I would have done this if I would have thought about it a little bit more. Think about it. Ask other people their opinions. Hey, I'm building this space. Come check it out. Because other people, especially ones that have spent more time in home theater, in media spaces, even if it's just using them, not even if it's just designing them, may have an opinion and a direction of looking at things that you may not have considered. So it's important that you really try and figure out how that space is going to be used in day-to-day life. And the more you can use it, the better, because in my opinion, then the more you can rationalize putting equipment, using it and spending on it, because you're going to utilize it more. I'm rationalizing it at this point for you. But first question should always be, how am I going to use this space? And then design the room. Don't even think about equipment. Design the room. How am I going to design it? What are my aesthetic needs? Is there a theme? Where are things going to go? Like a display, where does the display have to go? If I'm going to have dedicated subs, am I limited on their placement? If I'm even going to have them? Am I going to have problems with speakers? Do I need to try and figure out ways to accommodate them? And again, this is before you even think about the equipment. You've got to figure out the room before you think about equipment. People go about this wrong all the time. The first question they ask themselves and try and figure out is, what equipment am I going to put in this room? That should be one of the last things you think about, because the equipment, as we talked about in the last stream, is a tool to meet an end. It allows you potentially to overcome a shortcoming in the space that you are not able to work around, and then you use the tool to augment it. That's how that should be used, and that's when that question should be asked, is further down the line. How is the space going to be used? And then design the room. What are the limitations? How do I want to use it? Where do things need to be? Do I want a TV? Do I want a screen? Do I want any of this stuff? Where is seating going to be? What are my requirements for the seating? And then from there, aesthetics, right? How does this space need to look? Because then you may find, crap, I need it to look this way. So now I have to find a piece of equipment that is best suited to fit in this space to give me optimal performance. If you do it backwards and you pick the equipment first, well, now you have to design the aesthetic around the equipment. And that's not ideal. It may be ideal if you're an enthusiast, but for everybody, typically outside of you, which includes your immediate family, your spouse, your partner, friends, any of that stuff, or even yourself, I find myself moving more and more this direction. That's a problem. That is a situation where if I did that and I go, oh crap, and I try and have that conversation with my wife, she's going to look at me like I'm an absolute moron, because she's going to say, well, why didn't you think about that to begin with? In the back of my head, I'm going to go, shit, I think she's right. And then I'm going to come up with some rationalization to why I didn't. But at the end of the day, we all know that your wives are typically right. At least mine is. She likes to make sure that I'm aware of it. Um, but that's important. Figure that out and then go from there. Aesthetics, and we're not going to linger on this too much, even though it's the title of this particular video, are what allow you to feel comfortable in a room. People, humans, and really animals are creatures of light. We need light. You need light to survive. You need sun to survive, right? That is a fact. I mean, I guess you could augment it with vitamins if you wanted to, but we need light. For a lot of people, and I'm not speaking for everybody, having a bat cave is not ideal. For some, it is. There are always exceptions. There's somebody in chat, Vaughn Williams says, I like a raw blacked out equipment exposed and covers off the speaker's look. That's okay. Perfectly fine. Not for everybody. So it's important to figure out what aesthetic you like. And the more inviting and transitional you can make the room, looks great with lights on, looks great with lights off, the better the overall outcome is going to be. And if you can make, this is why I like Officina Acustica so much, if you can make the room the treatment and hide it so that it looks aesthetically pleasing, unless you're like Vaughn Williams, where you like it exposed, that's even more ideal, because then it is visually appeasing and it is functional. Double whammy. Really important. Great win right there. So aesthetics make the room more inviting. I can promise for a lot of people, especially if you're trying to get your family and your spouse and stuff to get in the room with you more, if you make the room inviting, approachable, and this is one that a lot of people don't think about, it's not aesthetics, easy to use, it will get used more. Even for yourself, subconsciously, we stray away from things that are not easy to use, that are not functional. If it is difficult to use, I can almost promise you, I can't say certainly, but I can almost promise you that you will use it less if it is difficult to use than if it was easy to use, approachable, and functional. So these are basic things that I think a lot of times get overlooked when considering building a new space, building an AV space, building a media space, building a multimedia or multi-use space. They don't get thought about. AVS, it is really common for everybody to immediately think, and I see it thread after thread after thread after thread. I've got this space. I need to put equipment in it. There's no consideration for designing the space. That's after the fact. I'm going to treat it after I get the speakers and everything. No, design the space first. Then we deal with the equipment. And to some extent, you do want to design acoustics around what you're doing with the space speaker wise and subwoofer wise. But a big part of it in figuring out what equipment is going to best augment that room is designing the room first. All right. Enough off that soapbox. Let's look at some questions, look at some comments. So, Williams Kramer says House, and I agree. House is a great app that has tons of pictures for inspiration. Some of them you look at and go, how is that even obtainable? But House is a great resource for getting inspirations on different things. So Ian from the Kansas City group says, I was fortunate enough to finish my basement to include a dedicated space. Yeah. If you are doing that, that's great. But it's still, I think, important, and he did do this, to make it aesthetically pleasing or to meet an aesthetic end goal of what you had in mind. And Ian was able to do that. The worst thing about my room design was the speaker selection. Sometimes that's what it is. Jeff says, I agree, but didn't you build your room on brown black swans? No. So that room was built and it was going to be built that way regardless. There was really no other way to be able to do it. I knew I wanted an enclosed room. The swans just worked. That room, because of how Officina did it, is really a chameleon. It's able to change and transition to work with all different kinds of speakers because of how much space is in the front wall, because I have to be able to walk back there, because of the sub setup in the baffles and all of that stuff. So it was designed to be flexible. What I told them was, I want this space to be, if I change my speakers, because I'm a dealer and this is a vendor room where vendors can utilize it. If I change my speakers, I want to be able to do it easily without taking walls down. I want to be able to run cables without taking walls down. Just pull a panel down and be able to run the cables. I want to be able to do all of that quickly and easily. That was the main consideration for that room. And that's where we got. The black swans just fit in there because of that design premise. Big Street Cinema says, one of the biggest issues I see is 9 of 10 don't take into account aesthetics. Yes. It's getting better. It is getting better. 10 years ago, it was awful, but it is getting better. People are thinking and considering these things more and more and more and more as we move into further and further and further down the line. It's getting thought about, but I agree. Even now, aesthetics or acoustics, excuse me, are not thought about it enough. It's gonna be acoustically, in my opinion, 50% of your experience, if not more, are from the room. It makes a huge 75% makes a huge difference in imaging, in soundstage, in all. I had a couple reps come over Tuesday, and first thing out of their mouth was, that soundstage, that imaging, do you really only have 2 speakers on? It's a bubble. And that comes from the room. That comes from the acoustics, the reflection, the absorption, the diffusion, all of that stuff that comes from the space. That needs to be considered more. I have to Google the word spouse. And I have to say, I love going to people's homes that have full blown theater looking spaces, especially ones with snack bars. I didn't do a snack bar. I love going to people's spaces with snack bars. I never take anything, but I love going in there. And I didn't make it because I knew I would get something every time I walked by and I would be fat. So I intentionally didn't put one in because I knew I would not be able to contain myself if there was a snack bar present. It's always dangerous. Big Street Cinema says, I need to go. A great podcast as usual. Sending you an email about some questions about Infra and 32 sub later on this day. Much appreciated, Big Street. Always happy to have you on. Hopefully we're sharing some knowledge or at least opinions. And I think that's important for people to recognize, guys. I do this professionally, but, and I think this is true for everybody that you watch, you should always verify what you see and hear on any podcast, on any YouTube video, on any written document, on any review. You want to get it from multiple sources. While I've got a lot of experience in this space, I am not immune to being wrong, even when I think I'm right. And I will be the first to admit when I'm wrong. So it's very important to always, always, always verify what you hear, what you see, because you want to make absolutely sure what you're getting is contextually correct. And it is entirely possible, as happens with a lot of things, that what is correct now, what is fact now, we may find out as we figure out different ways to measure things, as we figure out different technologies and stuff down the line, that that was actually incorrect in the future. So take it with a grain of salt. Again, I always encourage people, verify yourself. I mean, I've got a lot of opinions. I've got a lot of experience in doing this stuff. And I'm very dry and direct in the sense where I'll tell you if I think what you're doing or what I'm doing is a bad idea, if there's a shortcut or something, and I'll tell you my experiences. But even still, it is very important that you verify and check, not just myself, but everything. Very important. Cannot stress that enough. And that goes for anything you read on Audio Science Review, Aaron's Audio Corner, Audio Hall, anything. They're great publications, but it's still really important to verify. That's it. So, what should we do for the next topic? We'll probably do next Tuesday. This was a short one. I got on my soapbox and got off of it real quick. We'll have Jonathan on tomorrow to answer all of you guys' questions for the longer streams. What should the next topic be? You guys have any suggestions? Drop them in the comments here real quick before I jump off for the day. I'm always interested to see what you guys want to have talked about. I think it may be important to talk about external video processors and what they're actually doing. Not as a sales pitch for Mad VR, but as a informative gesture, I guess. And that's something I have to take with a grain of salt that I just thought about yesterday. The Valerian was on a Mad VR. So, and I looked past all of its tone map. I wasn't concerned about the color or anything like that. I was more concerned about its black floor, how bright it could get, the screen door effect, the sharpness, all of that stuff was what I was concerned about, because video processing is something that can be overcome using something like a Mad VR or a competitor. Did you ever hear back from Christie regarding the new vision projector? No, I did not, Torsten. I sent them a message and I didn't hear back from them. So thanks for reminding me. I'll send them another email. I got some other contacts I can reach out to because I need to ask them about 3D anyway. I didn't hear back. I need to reach out and talk to Stuart and Seymour about some new screens too. So maybe I'll do that after the stream. Maybe we'll do video processors. That seems like a good one. And the importance and things that they can do and the differences that displays can have. Just in a nutshell, not going into huge granular detail, just from experiences. And then in the next couple weeks, I will be leaving for Barcelona to ISE. Maybe we'll see something new there. Not a huge fan of that show, but it is cool to see all my friends from overseas. That is nice. But if nobody has any suggestions, we will wrap it up here. If you do have suggestions after we've closed down the stream, drop them into the comments, not into chat, but into the comments. And I try and answer or reply to every single comment that comes in. Video processor would be fun. Okay, so we'll do that. That'll be Tuesday's stream. I think we can do Tuesday. Can we do Tuesday? Can we do Tuesday? No. We'll probably do Monday. Probably do Monday for the stream. Can you ask Stuart if they will ultra perf? I would need your serial number. I don't know if they'll do that. I know somebody's emailing me, Macro, not just you. So you're the second one that's asked me that. Maybe you're piggybacking on that comment. But we'll do Monday, I think, next week, because I've got one of our cars has got to get picked up for a recall on Tuesday, and I want to make sure I'm available for that. So we'll do Monday for next week's stream, and we'll do video processors, things like Mad VR, and talk about what you can benefit from them, why you should potentially get one, what the use cases are, and go from there. So we'll wrap it up from there, guys. Jonathan and I will stream tomorrow, 8 p.m. Central. If you want some information on M-Wave and are considering going, I suggest you buy a ticket, midwestavexperience.net. Confirm that JVC is going. I talked to JBL. We're going to have a conversation with them about getting them out there and see what happens. More and more vendors are signing up, and we're going to have all kinds of seminars, experiences, comparisons and stuff out there. So if you're on the fence about going to M-Wave, it's worth it. Never had a negative thing said about M-Wave and people that regretted going. So if you want to buy a ticket, there are some home theater tours still available. Head on over to midwestavexperience.net and you can check out the event from there. But I will see you guys tomorrow. And then on Monday, stay safe out there. Enjoy those home theater journeys. And I'll see you guys in the next one. See you later.